Welcome to the Sand Science Experience, your source for the most current and impactful research and preprints in science. And hey, if you like what you hear today, and you want to keep exploring these kinds of discoveries with us, please do take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely helps support the Sand Science Experience quite a bit, allows us to keep doing these deep dives. So today, we are diving into, well, one of biology's really big mysteries. What actually makes us need to sleep? We've all felt it, right? That overwhelming feeling, the sleep pressure. But you know, for ages, scientists have wondered, what is that physically? What's actually building up in our brains telling us, okay, time to rest? And some amazing new research using fruit flies, of all things, might finally have pinpointed its molecular roots. And it's tied to something incredibly basic, our cells' energy factories. Okay, let's get into it. So for years, this search has been on for like the physical stuff that accumulates, the thing that makes sleep unavoidable after you've been awake a long time. It feels like it has to be something measurable, biologically real.
Exactly. And to finally get a handle on it, these researchers looked really closely at specific sleep-regulating neurons in flies. They're called dorsal fan-shaped body neurons, or dFBNs for short. And these cells are, well, they're in a really interesting position because they seem to directly control sleep. So the idea was, if something physical is building up, you'd likely see it right there in those dFBNs.
Right at the control center. And this is where things get super interesting, isn't it? The core finding.
It really is. What they found was, after keeping these flies awake, the changes in gene expression, which genes were turned on or off, were almost entirely related to proteins for mitochondrial respiration.
Wow.
Yeah, and ATP synthesis, specifically in those neurons.
So not just anywhere in the brain, not just any genes, but the actual energy-making machinery, the mitochondria, inside the sleep control cells?
Precisely. That was the huge clue. It strongly suggested that sleep pressure isn't some, vague brain fatigue thing, but a very specific problem with energy balance.
Okay, so that led into this new idea, the electron surplus thing.
That's right, the electron surplus hypothesis. Think of the mitochondria like a tiny power plant with an electron assembly line, the electron transport chain. It takes electrons from food and uses their energy to make ATP, the cell's fuel. Now, here's the twist. During waking hours, these specific dFBN neurons are actually inhibited. They're less active.
Oh, interesting. So they're not using as much ATP.
Exactly. But the fuel, the electrons, keeps arriving. So the assembly line, the electron transport chain starts to back up. It gets overfilled.
Like a microscopic traffic jam.
A perfect analogy. And when that chain gets overloaded, electrons can sort of leak out prematurely. This creates damaging molecules called reactive oxygen species, ROS. Little bursts of cellular exhaust, you could say.
And that leak, that ROS signal, is maybe the physical basis for sleep pressure, the alarm bell.
That's the proposal. Yep. It's the mitochondrion saying, hey, things are overloaded here, we need a reset, demanding sleep to clear the backlog and repair any damage.
Okay, that's a really neat idea, but how did they actually test it? How do you prove that electron flow is the key?
They did some really clever genetic engineering. First, they gave the flies a kind of escape route for those extra electrons. They introduced a protein called alternative oxidase, AOX. Think of it like a safety valve.
Okay.
It lets the surplus electrons bypass the main traffic jam and exit safely without generating as much ROS.
And what happened to sleep?
It reduced the need for sleep. Clearing that electron jam eased the sleep pressure.
Wow. Okay.
Then they did the opposite. They used other proteins, uncoupling proteins like UCP4A or UCP4C, which essentially make the mitochondria burn off those extra electrons as heat. They increase the demand for electrons.
So speeding up the line in a way.
Kind of, yeah. Preventing the backup by using up the electrons faster, and guess what?
Less sleep needed.
Exactly, it decreased sleep.
That's pretty convincing. But you mentioned something even more direct, using light.
Yes, this was maybe the most striking experiment. They engineered the mitochondria to make ATP using light energy using a special protein called Delta-rhodopsin. This basically bypassed the need for the normal electron transport chain altogether for making energy.
So no electron flow, no potential traffic jam.
Right. They removed the electron surplus problem at the source, and the result, it actually induced sleep, forced the flies into a sleep state.
Incredible. So manipulating electron flow really does control sleep pressure. It's not just about being tired, it's about metabolic regulation at the mitochondrial level.
It fundamentally shifts how we should think about it. And this electron surplus, this pressure, it seems to cause actual physical changes in the mitochondria. When flies are sleep deprived, their mitochondria literally change shape. They fragment, become smaller, less interconnected, less branched.
Like the power grid breaking down.
That's a good way to put it, less efficient. They also saw more mitophagy, the cell's cleanup process kicking in to remove damaged mitochondria. And importantly, these changes go away with recovery sleep. The cells actively repair and rebuild that mitochondrial network.
So the physical structure changes too, which leads to the question, if you artificially change the shape of the mitochondria in those dFBNs, does that affect sleep?
They tested that too, and yes, it absolutely does. When they forced the mitochondria to fragment using proteins like GRP1 or getting rid of proteins needed for fusion like OPA1 or MARF.
Let me guess, less sleep.
Dramatically less sleep.
Oh.
And crucially, it even got rid of the rebound sleep the extra sleep flies normally take after being deprived.
Whoa. It abolished the makeup sleep.
Yeah. But if they did the opposite, promoted fusion, made the mitochondria bigger and more connected by manipulating those same proteins in reverse.
More sleep.
More sleep. Both baseline sleep and the rebound sleep increased. They even became harder to wake up.
So it's causal. Mitochondrial shape, driven by this electron balance, directly dictates sleep need.
It really appears that way. And what's fascinating, connecting this to the bigger biological picture, is that this mitochondrial shaping, this fission and fusion, isn't just for sleep and flies. We see very similar dynamics in mammals related to hunger.
Hunger, how so?
In specific neurons in the hypothalamus, AGRP and POMC neurons, which control appetite and energy balance, their mitochondria also go through these fission and fusion cycles. And just like in the fly dFBNs, the state of the mitochondria is linked to the behavioral output. For example, increased fusion in AGRP neurons promotes feeding and weight gain.
Huh. So mitochondrial dynamics regulating energy balance for hunger, and mitochondrial dynamics regulating metabolic balance for sleep.
It suggests a really deep, ancient connection, a fundamental mechanism linking how cells handle energy with core survival behaviors like sleeping and eating. It might be that the flow of electrons through these mitochondrial chains acts almost like an hourglass, timing these essential restorative processes.
Which makes sense if you think about evolution, when complex nervous systems evolved needing tons of energy constantly.
Exactly. Aerobic metabolism is powerful, but maybe it comes with this inherent cost, the need for downtime, for sleep, to reset the metabolic balance and repair the machinery. Sleep, maybe like aging, could be an inescapable outcome of living an oxygen-fueled, high-energy life.
And you see echoes of this in human health too, right?
Absolutely. That profound fatigue, the kind that's different from just being tired after exercise, is a hallmark symptom of many human mitochondrial diseases. It points directly to that link between cellular energy production and the feeling of exhaustion or the need for rest. And it even fits with observations across species, this power law relating metabolism and sleep. Smaller animals generally have faster metabolism, shorter lifespans, and tend to sleep more. It all seems to point back to energy.
It really changes how you think about just feeling tired.
It does. It raises big questions about what other fundamental processes might be governed by these same mitochondrial energy sensing mechanisms.
So maybe the next time you feel that irresistible urge to sleep, that heavy feeling behind your eyes, just pause and think it might not just be your brain saying I'm tired. It could actually be your mitochondria, deep inside your cells, signaling that this ancient, crucial metabolic balancing act needs to happen. Time for a cellular pit stop. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. Santa Science Experience.